Hey guys, this is Kagomenesan. I am making this video as a request just to kind of see my process on how I make line art. My original video with my original audio was 50 minutes long, so I decided to remake the video. So I'm gonna kind of be adding commentary to what I already recorded because then I'd have to go back and start the line art all over again. And line art is one of those things that kind of drive me nuts because I'm such a perfectionist. I really don't want to have to do it again. So here we go. Now the program that I use is called Procreate. It's available on the iPad Pro exclusively. So unfortunately for those of you who use like Photoshop or Paint Tool Sci, I'm not really familiar with the program Paint Tool Sci, but I do use Photoshop quite often, and I recently got my Wacom tablet back. So what I'm going to be doing is making this video in two separate sections. The first one I'm going to be doing Natsu, which we see on the right here, and the second one I will be doing on Photoshop so you guys can see how I do my line art with that program, and I'll be doing Lucy with that. So to kind of get started here, as you'll notice, I opened my layer panel, very similar to how Photoshop does its work. And here, this picture is a request for like Lucy's reaction to dragonified Natsu. So originally I was gonna have his wing in the background. As you see, I pulled up the original kind of redraft because I did doodle it a while ago and I redid it just to kind of get his eyes proportionate and what have you. So with this one, my reference layer, I turn the opacity really low, and the pen that I use is called Technical Pen. It's part of your brush sets that you get with Procreate. It's already standard with the program. Now it does say modified on there. I honestly don't remember what I modified about it. I'll open the panel where you can see the preferences of that brush. I'm pretty sure here I'm just rambling as I'm recording. But it's really, I mean, I could just reset the Technical Pen back to its original settings. It's the exact same thing that I do use. So as you can see, I'm just kind of going through here trying to figure out what it was that I did modify about it, but it's not a drastic change to where if you do have this program, you'll notice that it's not similar to how mine is. But the reason why I use this Technical Pen is I absolutely love the pressure sensitivity that the iPad Pro and the iPencil emulate. So as you'll see here, when I do my line arts, I always start with the faces just because I feel like there's more detail involved with the face. Eyes is where I go to. So I'm going to demonstrate how that pressure sensitivity is, and in this line that I just made here, I barely put any pressure on it. You can see that it's very thin and it's kind of jagged. I'm not going to keep that. My hand was shaking because I was nervous that I was recording for people. But here I put a lot of pressure, and you can see how thick that line got. So as you can see, you know, I'm testing out how thick I want the line art to be by just drawing squiggles and seeing what I'm comfortable with. But the reason why I like this pen so much is because of the way that it tapers when I'm not putting pressure. So it's perfect for the eyes because Natsu's eyelashes or eye shape is, at least in my style, very thin where it starts, and then where, you know, the angle comes in, it becomes really thick. So what I do here as I'm using this program, it's really neat, is if I draw a line and I hold it there for just a couple of seconds, it automatically straightens it for me, and that's how I get his top lash so thick and so straight, I guess you can say. And here you can see that tapering effect where I'm starting the line art and making it really, really thin. So I really like this pen. It's the only pen that I do use for line art. When I did start, I was using Photoshop, and I really didn't know what I was doing because traditionally when I first started drawing, I was doing everything the traditional way, you know, pen, paper, pencil, actually pencil because I hated pen because those mistakes were permanent and I couldn't erase. But you know, you get the same effect with the pencil, you know, the darker, the tapered look when you're applying pressure and what have you. So that's why I like this pencil. When I first started, as I was saying earlier, my line arts were very boring, I guess you can say. I didn't like how they turned out because there wasn't any depth to them. You know, any any really good, talented, seasoned artist will tell you add some depth to your line art. Have some sections of it that are thicker than some sections that are thinner. It just makes it, I don't know what it does that makes that look a little more professional, I guess you can say. But all in all, I mean, whatever your style is your style. Nobody can tell you if it's bad or if it's good, because that's the thing about art. It's completely, up to you how you want it to be. So, as I'm continuing on, I sped up the video because, as I mentioned before, this original video was 50 minutes long of me just talking. And now that I'm re recording the audio, I have no idea what I was talking about. I think I was just rambling. I think my cat also was making some noise in the background and I was yelling at him. But yeah, so at this point, I'm going to stop recording and I'm going to see if I can speed this up a little bit just so this tutorial watching thing can be a little bit faster, and then I'll pick it back up because there are some sections later on as I'm continuing this line art where I am providing some information and instruction. So when it gets to that point, I'll just start recording again. Now at this point, you can see I've been redrawing this line over and over again. The reason why I kept doing it is because I felt like the ends were a little squiggly and it was driving me nuts. So I'm the kind of person who, if I'm working on Photoshop, I will constantly be pressing Control Shift Z to undo, redo infinitely when I can't get my line. So how I get that so straight, I guess you can say, which to me it's, as I'm re-watching this video, it's still kind of driving me a little nuts, but I honestly just go in fast, quick motions. I find that the faster I go, the smoother, the more straight that it looks. And I create multiple layers when I am doing that so that I can easily go and erase overlapping lines. So in this section, I did his collarbone, and I didn't like how it looked. It looked too small. So what I really like about this program is I can use that little squiggly circle up there to select a portion of the layer that I'm doing, and I can change it and freeform it in whatever way that I want. If I want to do it proportionate, I just choose the magnetic version that you saw on the very bottom, or freeform honestly is what I use because I can turn it in whatever angle, make it however big. The only thing about that is it does, since it's not a perfect vector when it comes to that line art, is it does kind of blur it a little bit. So if any of you guys are using the program, I would definitely take that into consideration. The reason I just kept it is honestly I couldn't really tell that it did blur the line art, I guess you can say. So it turned out just fine. I mean, it was acceptable to me, and I'm a perfectionist, so I'm just gonna go ahead and keep it. I don't remember why I put an arrow there. So here you saw I created another layer because I'm going to get started on his hair. Now Natsu has a crazy head of hair, so I try to be as careful as I possibly can when it comes to doing this because I want to be able to taper them off, which is why I like this pen, as I mentioned earlier, because it gets thicker in sections and thinner in other sections. And you know, I try and go in swift, fast movements as I was before, just to make sure that the lines are kind of, sort of, you know, straight. Well, I guess not straight because obviously his hair is kind of flared out there, but just making sure that, you know, they're not squiggly or imperfect, at least in my opinion. I definitely have seen art and stuff that other people have done where it is a little imperfect there, and it kind of gives it a little more character. But as for me, it drives me nuts when I'm doing my own. So here I've created this other layer so that when I do go over like the features on his face or what have you, I can just go back and erase them really easily without having to erase any part of the hair that I do. Because when you erase it, there isn't an eraser on this planet that will make it look like it was flawless, at least to me. Because if I erase a portion of the line art that I want to keep, and I go back there and I try to fill some of those missing pixels that your stroke does naturally, it just looks artificial to me. It drives me crazy. So that's why I create those multiple layers. Even when I'm doing line art, it's not like I'm even coloring it, but I tell you, on some of my bigger projects, I have like 50,000 layers. I'm not even, okay, well, I'm probably over exaggerating, but I have a lot of layers just because, I don't know, I guess it's just instinct for me now because it's just so easy when you're doing it on Procreate, this handheld version, that I just create an infinite amount of layers or however much I want. The only thing I have to give a side of caution to is it does make the file really large, and that's why I don't use Pixiv. If anybody, well, nobody follows me on there. I have no followers, but I don't upload my art on there because it only lets you upload, I think, up to 35 megabytes. I'm not 100% sure. I could totally be wrong, but my files are so large on my iPad. I don't know why, but well, no, I do know why, because I make 50 billion layers. So I definitely had to give you that little cautionary warning. If you are using this program, is the more layers you create, the bigger the actual file is going to be. So definitely take that into consideration. But here you can see I am just going in like swift strokes, even though I'm overlapping that line art. Because it's its own layer, I can just go back and erase what's overlapping and not have to worry about erasing his arm that's sticking out there. So that's why I do multiple layers even when I'm doing my line art. So at this point, I think I was on the last little section that I was actually doing the line art for, because I'm pretty sure all that I had left was his hand. I added a couple little creases, and I didn't make them exactly the way my reference is. Usually when I am doing my line art, there are some things that I do change about how the original draft. I mean, if you look at some of my before and afters, which I have put on like my DA or my Twitter or even my Tumblr blog there, the way that it looks like when it's finished doesn't look like how I drafted it at all. Usually because, you know, as I'm drafting, I'm realizing this really isn't proportionate, or finding a couple imperfections here and there. So yeah, that's why these fingers, even, you know, the rest of the sketch, like the hair, it doesn't exactly 100% match my rough draft or my reference or what have you, but it's close enough. You know, I like how it turns out in the end. So one of my favorite features about using Procreate as a program is how you're able to really easily undo any mistakes that you do make. You know, anybody who uses Paint-Tool-Sai or Photoshop knows the command for undo when you make a mistake. With actual Procreate, the way that you undo is by double tapping the screen, and it's so easy, so simple. The only embarrassing thing about that is when I am in public, I actually tend to double tap my paper if I'm not doing it on my iPad. And yeah, I'll definitely admit, you know, so I've seen some posts that people do make when they're doing the motion of the Control-Shift-Z when they're undoing, and they're like, wait a second, this is actually paper. I can't undo that. So yeah, same thing, just because I use Procreate all the time. But I think Procreate is a fantastic program if you do happen to have an iPad Pro or want to get one in the future. It is amazing in terms of price and in terms of how the actual system works, because I mean, you get the dependability of an Apple, because I've owned many different devices and I've never once had any issues with my iPad, which I'm sure everybody has their own opinions on, stuff. I was a proud Galaxy user before I made the full conversion. But the program Procreate is $5.99 off the Apple Store. That's awesome. So it's definitely worth it. I mean, you get a Photoshop-like program where in Photoshop, if you want to buy the newest and greatest, is, 60, $70. And I could be wrong. It's not like I, look at their store. I know you can get a version of it for free. Now, I think if you join their e-club or what have you, don't quote me on that. I don't know where you can get it. The version I use is purchased. But yeah. So if you guys were paying attention earlier when I was making his horn, I was trying to decide what style I wanted it to do. I obviously didn't go with the very linear style that I originally sketched. I wanted it to be kind of like a layered style, as if the bone were growing on bone. So what I did to kind of match and connect when I would do these lines as I'm doing right now is I actually copied the section that I did like, because I erased the whole first one when I was kind of getting a feel for it, since I was freehanding it. That's another thing, I really like about this program, just like when I rearranged his collarbone earlier, is just selecting that and copying it. It makes for making, I guess, symmetrical eyes so easy, because sometimes when we draw that second eye, we're like, that doesn't look like the original. So that tool, the select and the copy, you can move around freely, freeform. It's a lifesaver. I absolutely love it. So at this point, I'm just kind of going throughout the whole entire picture. I'm fine-tuning a couple of details, fixing a couple of things. You see me changing my eraser just to kind of make sure I get the right size and I don't erase anything that I obviously don't want to. But here I'm erasing, which is why I create those multiple layers, what would be hidden behind his hair, since his hair is in the front layer. I kind of mess around with my style. I used to, if you look at some of my older works before I even got my iPad, I would just erase everything that was hiding behind the hair, because I thought, obviously, hair's in front of it, why should it show? But in this version, I actually select a different eraser, and I kind of taper it, where it kind of gives the illusion that it is being erased, but not really. The reason why I did that is I was actually staring at my mom one day, and I saw her eyes through her hair, even though her hair was in front of her face. So I was like, well, I mean, maybe that's why most anime or manga, when they do eyebrows and eyes and hair is covering them, they still draw them because it's still there. Or it could just be that they're lazy. I mean, that's totally acceptable. I'm a lazy person too. But so yeah, my new and constantly developing style, I've decided that's how I'm kind of gonna do things. There are some pieces of work that I will completely delete it. It really depends, but in this instance, he's supposed to be kind of evilish, darkish, tempting, I guess you can say. I will say, if you do use Procreate and you like the pen, I definitely give a word of caution to it. I haven't modified it, as you see, but you can see its opacity is actually not 100%. You can see as I was doodling under it, if you decide to color with that pen, you will notice that if you're coloring in multiple layers, that the colors below that pen will show through. So definitely keep that in caution. I actually just use a different pen when I am coloring. I'll leave it up to you guys if you want to see a tutorial of me coloring this. I'm not 100% fond of my coloring, but I guess that is just how I interpret my artwork, not necessarily the same way as everybody else does. But if y'all want to see a video of me coloring it, just comment or what have you. I'll make another one. I'm gonna go ahead and end this one here. I will be making a separate one with Lucy on how I do the line art in Photoshop. So just stay tuned, and thank you guys so much for watching, and you guys have a great rest of your day. See you later.